scientists have found that the New Caledonian crow is the most intelligent. They can also recognize faces and can hold a grudge against someone who was rude to them for several years.
When most people see a crow, they barely notice it. Just another blackbird sitting quietly on a rooftop or power line. But what if that bird is paying far more attention to you than you're paying to it? Scientists have discovered that crows can recognize individual human faces, remember them for years, and even warn other crows about specific people. Then something even stranger happened. Researchers used artificial intelligence to study thousands of hours of crow calls, expecting to organize simple sounds like food calls and danger warnings. Instead, the AI uncovered hidden patterns that nobody expected. The recordings appeared to contain an organized communication system far more complex than anyone imagined. And according to the data, one subject kept appearing over and over again: humans. If that's true, the crow quietly watching you from across the street may already know far more about you than you ever realized. And this is only the beginning. Most people assume they're invisible when walking down the street. The birds sitting overhead seem like nothing more than part of the background. But crows see the world very differently. They don't need a reason to pay attention to someone, they simply do. Researchers have discovered that crows carefully observe the people around them, noticing details most of us never think about. They watch the way you walk, the direction you travel, even the objects you carry. From rooftops, power lines, and tall trees, they have a perfect view of everything happening below without attracting attention themselves. If you follow the same route every day, there's a good chance the local crows have already seen you dozens, maybe hundreds of times. To you, they're just random birds. To them, you're becoming a familiar face. And once a crow remembers your face, it rarely forgets it. The project began with a simple goal. Scientists wanted artificial intelligence to sort thousands of crow recordings into basic categories like warning calls, food calls, and social sounds. At first, everything seemed normal, but then the AI kept detecting unusual vocal patterns that didn't fit any known group. Researchers assumed it was a mistake, so they repeated the analysis with new recordings. The same patterns appeared again and again. The system wasn't making errors. It was finding something humans had missed. Some calls seemed to follow a consistent structure, appearing in similar situations across different locations. That unexpected discovery raised an exciting possibility. What if crow communication was far more organized than anyone had ever imagined? As researchers continued studying the recordings, they noticed something even more surprising. The mysterious sounds weren't appearing randomly. Certain calls consistently appeared in specific positions within longer vocal sequences, almost as if they were following grammatical rules. Changing the order of the sounds seemed to change their function, much like rearranging words changes the meaning of a sentence. That was completely different from the simple alarm call scientists had always expected. Instead of random noises, the AI detected organized patterns repeating across thousands of recordings collected from different cities and forests. While the system couldn't translate what the crows were actually saying, it revealed something just as important. Their communication appeared far more structured than anyone had imagined. And then one ordinary man wearing a bright red cap accidentally gave researchers the most convincing evidence yet. One observation completely changed the direction of the research. Scientists noticed that every time a man wearing a bright red cap walked through the same park, a nearby crow produced a very specific call. To human ears, it sounded like any other crow noise, but the AI detected something unusual. The structure, timing, and pitch of that call were nearly identical every single time the man appeared. At first, this wasn't too surprising because scientists already knew crows could recognize individual human faces. Then, a few days later, something happened that nobody expected. A completely different crow, one that researchers believed had never encountered the man before, made the exact same vocal pattern the moment it saw him. Suddenly, the mystery wasn't about memory anymore. It raised a much bigger question. Had one crow somehow described that specific person to another? If so, the birds weren't just recognizing people, they were sharing information about them. Researchers decided to test whether crows were simply recognizing people on their own or actually sharing information with one another. The results were astonishing. After a single crow reacted to a specific person, nearby crows that had never been part of the original encounter soon began reacting in exactly the same way. Within days, birds across the area appeared to recognize that individual without any direct experience. It looked as if the information had spread through the local crow population. Even more surprising, years later, many of those birds continued responding to the same person as though they had never forgotten. Scientists couldn't say they were using a human-like language, but one thing became difficult to ignore. These birds weren't learning only from personal experience. They were learning from each other. And if they could pass along information about dangerous people, it raised an even more fascinating question: what else were they capable of communicating? The more scientists studied crows, the clearer it became that these birds weren't relying on instinct alone. In laboratory experiments, crows solved puzzles they had never seen before, using logic instead of trial and and error. Some bent pieces of wire into hooks to reach food, while others carefully selected the right-sized stick for a specific task. Even more impressive, they remembered successful solutions and applied them to completely different problems later on. This level of flexible thinking is incredibly rare in the animal kingdom and is usually associated with primates. That's exactly why the AI findings attracted so much attention. If an animal capable of planning, remembering faces, and making tools also possesses a highly structured communication system, then scientists may have underestimated crow intelligence for decades. And one famous experiment would push that idea even further. One of the most famous crow experiments looked almost impossible at first. Researchers placed food inside a tall tube filled with water, leaving it just out of reach. The crow couldn't grab it with its beak, and there was no obvious solution. Then something remarkable happened. Instead of giving up, the bird began dropping small stones into the tube one by one. As the water level slowly rose, the food moved closer until it was finally within reach. The crow had solved the problem without any training, demonstrating an understanding of cause and effect that many animals never show. Similar experiments produced equally surprising results, with crows planning several steps ahead before making a move. These discoveries convinced scientists that crow intelligence was far more advanced than anyone had imagined. But perhaps their most unsettling ability wasn't solving puzzles. It was remembering the people who crossed their path, sometimes for years. Scientists have discovered that crows can remember specific human faces for many years. In long-term studies, birds reacted to the same people long after the original encounter had happened. Even more surprising, younger crows that were born later sometimes showed the same reaction, suggesting they had learned about those individuals from older birds. Researchers believe this information spreads through social learning, allowing entire groups to recognize potential threats without experiencing them directly. That means a single negative encounter with one crow may eventually become known to many others nearby. The birds overhead may not just be watching strangers, they may already know exactly who you are. Perhaps the most surprising discovery wasn't about communication or memory, it was about planning. Scientists observed that crows don't simply eat food whenever they find it. Instead, they often hide it in carefully chosen locations, sometimes creating dozens of separate hiding places. But here's the remarkable part. If a crow realizes another bird was watching, it may secretly return later and move the food somewhere else. That behavior suggests the crow understands another animal might steal from it. In other words, it appears to consider what another individual has seen and what that individual might do next. This level of planning was once thought to exist mainly in humans and a handful of highly intelligent mammals. Yet crows perform it naturally in the wild every day. The more researchers studied these birds, the more they realized intelligence isn't measured by brain size alone. And that made the AI's mysterious discovery seem even more believable. As scientists analyzed thousands of crow vocalizations, another fascinating possibility emerged. Certain calls appeared to be directed at specific birds rather than the entire flock. While researchers still can't translate crow communication, some believe these unique sound patterns may function like individual identifiers, allowing one crow to get another's attention without confusing the rest of the group. Similar behavior has already been observed in a few highly social animals, making the idea surprisingly believable. Artificial intelligence also detected subtle differences in these calls that human ears could barely notice, suggesting there was far more information hidden inside each sound than anyone realized. Although the evidence isn't enough to claim that crows literally have names, it does suggest their communication may be far more personalized than scientists once believed. And if that's true, then their social lives are probably much more complex than we ever imagined. The biggest question is no longer whether crows communicate. Scientists already know they do. The real challenge is understanding what they're actually saying. That's where artificial intelligence is changing everything. Instead of listening the way humans do, AI compares millions of tiny details hidden inside each sound, detecting patterns impossible for the human ear to notice. Researchers hope that, as larger databases become available, these systems may eventually connect specific vocal patterns with real behaviors and situations. That doesn't mean anyone is close to translating crow conversations word for word, but for the first time, scientists have a tool powerful enough to search for hidden rules inside their communication. If those rules truly exist, AI could eventually reveal one of the most sophisticated animal communication systems ever discovered. And if that day comes, our understanding of intelligence may change forever. Despite everything scientists have learned, the biggest questions remain unanswered. Researchers still don't know exactly how much information crows can exchange with one another or whether their calls follow rules similar to grammar. Artificial intelligence has revealed patterns that humans never noticed, but recognizing patterns is very different from understanding meaning. A sequence of sounds might describe danger, identify a person, or coordinate a group's behavior. But without a true translation, nobody can say for certain. Every new recording adds another piece to the puzzle, yet the complete picture remains frustratingly out of reach. Scientists believe they're only beginning to understand understand one of the most intelligent birds on Earth. And if future AI systems become even more advanced, they may uncover something far more extraordinary than anyone expects. For centuries, crows were dismissed as ordinary birds, little more than dark shapes flying across the sky. Today, science tells a very different story. They recognize human faces, remember events for years, solve complex problems, create tools, and appear to share important information with one another. Now, artificial intelligence is uncovering hidden structures inside their calls that researchers never knew existed. Whether those patterns represent a true language or something entirely different is still unknown. But one thing is becoming increasingly clear: we have underestimated these birds for a very long time. So the next time you notice a crow watching from a rooftop or a nearby tree, remember this: you may think you're observing it, while in reality, it has been quietly observing you all along.